Hello and welcome to Ruggles Roundup. It's the portion of our Elevated Mission podcast where we talk about all things sports. We're super excited to bring this episode to you. In our journey through the NFL divisions, we are landing today on the NFC West. It's a fun one. A lot of really good teams. A team that just was in the Super Bowl this last year. And so where are we going to start here? We got some fun ones to look at.
Yeah, I mean, do we start at the bottom or do we start at the top? I'm going to start with the bottom team, I think is where we go, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. They're a team that I'm not as low on as I was heading into last year. I thought last year I just really didn't know what this roster was going to look like. But, I mean, you go out there and you get maybe the most NFL-ready wide receiver that I have seen in any year. I think maybe some guys have had more potential, but I mean, when you talk about just NFL readiness, ready to go out there and be the number one target right off the bat, Marvin Harrison Jr. is the guy that you're looking for. If you can unlock Kyler Murray with the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr., you can get something really dynamic out there. Trey McBride is a great tight end, really dynamic action there. They just drafted Paris Johnson Jr., the left tackle last year. As we know in the NFL, it takes a while for those offensive linemen to develop. And so maybe year two, we see him get into that category of best tackles, best pass blockers in the NFL. We'll see as, those things happen. And we just need to see this kind of offense mature with the new system that they're putting in.
For sure. Yeah. Though I look to see them take a step forward. I don't know if it's going to be a huge step forward, but you're going to see, I think, glimmer of hope. Maybe they could, if they can even get in the possibility, I think of playing 500 ball, at the end of the season. There's going to be a lot of hope out there in the desert, and you kind of go, okay, let's see if they can take another step the year after. So I like you say, I don't think they're vying for a Super Bowl by any means, but they did some nice things adding to that roster. They can continue to add in next off seasons, to that roster as well, and just keep growing. And if they can get their quarterback kind of back on track and on track for an entire year, we've seen glimpses of really good football play, but it hasn't been able to, for a 17 game season. It doesn't, it just doesn't last the whole season. If we can see that, he's just playing good football all 17 games this regular season, then I think that's a big, just ray of sunshine in the desert in Arizona.
Oh, absolutely. As they don't need any more sunshine. Maybe it's a cloud, actually, as that's more.
Yes, we do this in the summer. It's probably 114 in Arizona right at the current moment.
Exactly. They're probably praying for a cloud to cover up that sun. So it's a nice, cool cloud covering the sun for you guys in Arizona.
Right.
Yeah, awesome stuff there. I think Arizona is one of those teams that I think can develop. They have a wide receiver. They have a quarterback. That's usually a combo for success. You just see some of those other pieces that come together for them to become into that next tier of teams, which leads you into the Rams and Seahawks, as I think those are two teams that are relatively even with each other. At least last year's record-wise, they were relatively even with each other, going 10-7 for the Los Angeles Rams and Seattle going 9-8 last year. I think both these teams are looking to improve heading into this upcoming season, and I'm interested to see who's going to end up being that number two guy.
Yeah, I think as the health of Matthew Stafford goes, so goes the Los Angeles Rams. When we saw a healthy Matthew Stafford down the stretch in Los Angeles, they were a team to contend with. They played Detroit as tough a game as we saw in the playoffs. Detroit playing good football when playoff time came around, and the Rams playing good football as well. I think early in the season, they were trying to kind of figure that out and, just where they fit. They got some nice young and old wide receiver talent. And, it's going to be a little bit something different there in Los Angeles with some change up at the defensive line. But we've talked about this before. like what they did in the draft from the defensive line standpoint there. And so, and Seattle, we got a new regime, right? So, a little bit of a change up there, but I think that's going to be a breath of fresh air in the building. So, I think, Gino's been playing good football, at the quarterback position, and it doesn't seem like he's not going to do that this year. We didn't know whether we could trust it going into last year. Was that just a one-season fluke? But Gino came out and played good football again last year.
Yeah, I think he's a really really good player, and the benefit that he has is that he's surrounded by a lot of really young players that are developing, becoming really good. He gets to be the veteran around those guys. As they all elevate, he can dip down a little bit and let those guys really take over because he's got so much really really fun talent out there, especially on the defensive end to be able to keep those scores low. They've drafted really really great this year, these last few years. And I hope to see them continue to go up in these standings because they got so much of that really, really nice defensive depth, at least is what I really, really like to see from them. As Reek Woolen and Devin Witherspoon, really, really nice DBs out there that they were able to pick up. And they've just done other things like linebacker Jerome Baker's a nice pickup. I think there's other guys out there that are going to give some really good snaps out there as well. And so I'm excited to see what they can do in their base defense. And then offensively, they are letting guys develop, and you got the obvious two wide receivers, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. You're letting Jackson Smith and Jigba develop out there as well. I think he's a guy that can slowly, you can see, get more and more targets in this system, especially from that slot position. You got a guy that is a really good wide receiving tight end, Noah Fant. And then their offensive line, they've put a lot of effort into making that into a very viable, long-lasting offensive line that even can go one injury down, and you can see some guys step in there and be solid producing players. So I like Seattle, but you question Geno Smith, is he the guy that can take you all the way to the promised land in this really competitive NFC West?
Yeah, it's the NFC West is just really tough. You say you got three solid playoff contending football teams in a 4-team division, and so you just go, it's not an easy task. And so I think Geno can. I think Geno's he's the wily veteran. He was able to sit behind Russell Wilson for a while, kind of figure out who he was as a football player, was able to take all those mental reps. I was listening to a podcast where he was explaining how every snap that Russell Wilson took, he was taking along with Russell Wilson. So he was taking mental snaps that whole time. So he said, I wasn't just sitting on the sidelines that whole time. I was playing football. I just had to do it with my mind. And so he's got all that experience of just being on an NFL field for so long. And so I think he can. I think he can play smart, veteran football. And he can take them as far as the rest of the team can go as well.
Oh, absolutely. If you see all those young guys really step up, you'll be seeing them in contention with the top teams in the NFC this upcoming year. I think same goes for the Rams. You add in, I mean, we talked about this, and this is maybe a little bit lesser version of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid when we talked about the AFC West. This is kind of a similar situation where you got one of the best coaches in the NFL paired up with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL with Matthew Stafford. I think they're going to always be a tough team to beat. And then you got, all the weapons that they have, as they've done a really fantastic job drafting. Just speaking of them, who do you think is going to be their number one wide receiver this next year? Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua? I think they're both going to be kind of 1A, 1B in this system. But statistically, who do you see being that guy that they lean on in the tough situations?
I think it's going to be Puka. I was super impressed with him last year. And then I've heard about the work he's been doing in the offseason. Like, dude is like getting shredded and just like ready for work this year. So I'm gonna lean that way. But it's hard to pick against Cooper Kupp. That dude is a machine.
Yeah, you're talking about a former Triple Crown winner for
right?
the wide receiver position. It's hard to bet against Cooper Kupp, and that was his first season with Matthew Stafford. Now he's been a little dinged up since then, and I think if he gets a fully healthy season, I think he's going to be the number one guy in this system. But I just see with him being older, he's always been a lighter wide receiver. He hasn't been one of those really stocky built like Heinz Ward type players.
Yeah.
He's a skinnier guy, and so I think that Puka Nakua can take a little bit more of that damage, and so I see him being that number one guy in that offense. I love what they did with their running back room too. Kyron Williams already a really good back, but they really lean on him being a downhill between the tackles, kind of bump and stumble in a little after contact action, and you want a guy that can go out there and give you the similar thing. You say Kyron Williams, oh, he goes down for a week. You got now Blake Corum, who did that exact same thing at the highest level with Michigan. And now he comes into the NFL running a very, I think, comparable system that they're going to be asking him to do a very similar thing. I love Blake Corum in the system. I think they got a 1-2 punch there that is a little redundant, but I do think is going to be nice just because of how much you get beat up at that running back position.
Yeah, I like it as well. I think that's going to be a nice offense for sure. I can't get enough of the video. We may have mentioned this on another one of the podcasts, but I can't get enough of the video of them in the huddle last year and Matthew Stafford saying the play. Have you seen this? Have we talked about this? And
No.
Stafford is saying the play. And he's just, all the tags that McVay has on his plays, is so long. And McVay, and then all of a sudden Matthew Stafford's like, just go. He's still talking, guys. He's still talking. He's still talking. Just go. Like telling them just to go line up. We're fine.
He's still talking. Hilarious.
Yeah.
McVay is a guy that brings in so much to an offense, and that's why it works so well with a guy like Matthew Stafford, who's absorbed so much of the game. They're able to do so many things that he wasn't able to do beforehand. That just opens up so many things for this team. And so Rams, they could be at one of the top teams as long as those vets stay healthy. They're really tough out against anybody. And then replacing Aaron Donald, it's almost impossible. I think, at least for my generation, he's the greatest defensive player I've ever watched.
So good.
And so it is impossible. I would argue, as I'm 100% biased, I would say he's the best defensive player of all time. But that would be something that I'm sure is an argument and you can get out there, but he's in that category.
He is in that category. Even if you love Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White, like those are guys that are near and dear to my heart, just watching them, get out there and get after it. I mean, Reggie White, you gotta watch a video of him doing the hump move, and it's hard to not love the way that man played football. But Aaron Donald right there, and just an undersized defensive lineman that was chiseled like a sculpture and just did all the little things right all the time. And even when he made mistakes, he could make it good. He could make things up and just get it done. So, yeah, he's going to be missed. But I love those Florida State draft picks that they picked up in the draft. And I think – maybe they've got a chance to be a nice defensive line unit still. Again, you don't replace Aaron Donald. You just, live with that he's gone. But I'm looking forward to see this young defensive line and what they can do. I loved what they did at Florida State last year.
Completely agree. Yeah, Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, both of them are really fantastic players, and I think we can see a lot more out of them in this system because you're talking about a system that loves to do stunts, pulls, swaps. They do a lot of things to open up those guys, and it felt like at Florida those guys didn't get to see a lot of that, but we saw in the combine them being absolute dynamic athletes, and so if they're able to get used in a system where they get to move around, they get to do all these twists and pulls and stunts, they're going to be in a really nice place. And I expect them to be a couple of players that may look even better than they did in the college game. And you're like, oh, wow, we didn't see them do this. And they're doing this now at the NFL level.
Yeah. But the kind of the class of this division, you got to say, even with those really good teams, is a team that was in the Super Bowl last year for the NFC. You just got talent stacked all over the place, and that is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about probably the most talented squad in the NFL. There's very few teams that can pump out what they have. Brock Purdy has been a fantastic quarterback. That was the question mark. But when they have Jimmy Garoppolo, they had a lot of injury history there. They just couldn't figure it out, and then they got Brock Purdy, who has been a fantastic fit there at the system. Still, a lot of people question: is he a part of the system, or is he the quarterback of the future? I personally think he's the quarterback of the future, but it doesn't make it easy to tell because you got Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, even Kyle Juszczyk, Trent Williams as blocking for you. You have the most talented offense, and so you're like, wow, he's just living in luxury. So I don't know, but it's working.
Yeah, you got the new Netflix docu-series out there right now, Receivers, and two of the 49ers are in the receivers out there. They got George Kittle and they got Deebo Samuels. It's so fun to watch these guys work and get after it. It just feels like there's weapons upon weapons upon weapons. You got Kyle Shanahan, with a system that came from Mike Shanahan, which came from, Bill Walsh, the original, 49er dynasty, and coming out of that system, that West Coast offense. And they've just done so many amazing things. And so they just got to get over that hump, right? Kyle Shanahan just has this black cloud of finishing out Super Bowls. And so he's got to get that done. Can he vanquish the clouds this year and actually get it done, do you think? Or is he going to still sit there with the super talented roster with his great, always working system, but not quite get the Super Bowl trophy in his hands?
Yeah, it's an interesting spot to be at. You also got the Brandon Ayuk. I think
Yeah.
he asked for a trade.
He did ask
to get
for a
out
trade.
of there.
Yeah, that's fresh. That's right. Hot off the presses.
Yeah, so I think that's a very interesting spot to be at. Brandon Ayuk, is he a wide receiver of the system, or is he a wide receiver of that caliber? He seemed to be the better pairing between him and Brock Purdy than Deebo Samuel and Brock Purdy.
Right.
But I did also open up my eyes that when Deebo Samuel was out of last season, they struggled a lot more than when you see Brandon Ayuk out of the game. So maybe it's because that system likes to utilize all the versatility of Deebo, and Brandon Ayuk gets to reap the benefits of getting opened up by all that action. But Brandon Ayuk has been statistically one of the better wide receivers in all the NFL. And so it's an interesting spot to be out there. But they went and drafted Ricky Pearsall out of Florida. I think he's a dynamic wide receiver. I didn't realize that he was 6'2", as he plays kind of smaller looking on the field. But I think he's a guy that can really bring in a lot of versatility to his game. And we may see him get a lot more action with that Brandon Ayuk trade request. Interesting spot to be at. And then we've been talking all offense, but that defense is arguably more impressive than that offense is, as they have just studs at every position.
Yeah, it seems like they can just roll out at every level like a Pro Bowl team. It's silliness how much defensive talent they've got. And so, this is a team that, could just run the table. I mean, that's how much talent they've got and ability. And even when Ayuk, if he walks out of the building, I'm sure they're going to get some nice things in return for him. Like you said, he's arguably statistically been one of the top receivers in the game. And so, it's probably more talent just rolling back towards San Francisco if they do move him. And even if he stays there and he's a little disgruntled, again, it almost doesn't matter. There's just a ton of boatload of talent in San Francisco. And so that defense, I mean, again, Bosa, it just, if he stays healthy, he's like one of those guys too. You never know. The Bosa brothers always are nicked up and all that. But I mean, he can get as good as anybody in the league. He can get after that quarterback. They're strong up the middle as well. I mean, and their backfield, that's nice as well. So like you when you're an offensive coordinator and you're getting ready for this defense, what do you set up as your game plan? Like, how are we going to attack their weakness? Like you go, I don't know. Well, I guess we just play our offense. That's all. That's all we're
gotta
gonna
be
do.
really good offense. Just gotta be. You gotta have Patrick Mahomes. That's right. What you gotta have. Is you gotta have a guy that can scramble around 3 yards, throw it off his off foot, and throw it behind his back and complete it 30 yards down the field. That's what you need to be able to beat that defense. Yeah, that's the truth of that defense. Fred Warner, a missile just around the football field, makes so many plays. Speaking of making so many plays, Christian McCaffrey had almost 1,500 rushing yards and about 550 receiving yards this last season. Played 16 games. Can we expect similar production from him this next year, as that was his first fully healthy season since pre-COVID, since before the world stopped in 2019? That was the last full season he had with Carolina. Do we see him be still that guy that we expect to get 250 plus carries in this upcoming year?
I tell you what, since he's been in San Fran, even though he's had to sit out some games, he's been healthy-ish, right? Like, I mean, they haven't been the big injuries that we saw in the Carolinas, where he had to sit out for long stretches of time. So I expect him to be healthy the whole season, and or just maybe a few bang-ups along the way, but expect to see him the majority of the time, and him to be ready, and them to make sure he's ready come playoff time. Again, this is a team kind of like the Chiefs when we looked at the AFC West, that if you're not in the Super Bowl, right, it's not as good a year as they're hoping for. And, that's their expectations. That's where their sights are. So they need him healthy come playoff time. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for them to sit him a game, kind of almost precautionary, to make sure if he's a little banged up. No one goes through a 17-game season without being a little banged up,
Oh, yeah. And it's hard to say a guy's going to go out there and be a 2,000-yard total yardage guy again, because you're like, 2,000 yards, that's not an easy feat, whether you got it from receiving and rushing the football. It's a tough feat no matter what. Do you see any other running back in the league being able to do that next year, or is it just Christian McCaffrey, and if he doesn't do it, there's nobody else?
I think there's some guys that are capable, but they play in systems where they're in 2 or 3 backfields where they don't get all the looks and carries, because I think there's some guys that you could go, if they carried the number, like the load, like they were just like, if it was like the 1980s or the 1990s where these guys never leave the field, then I'd say, yeah, there's some dudes out there that could do it. But there's so much rotation in most of these backfields. I think he might be the guy. I'm trying to think, like, just who's going to stay out there for enough snaps to actually get that done.
Yeah, that's because the guys that you think of when you think of those guys that can go out there and do that kind of thing, it is Breece Hall, Jahmyr Gibbs can go out there and do that.
Yeah.
Guys that are versatile. Even I feel like, Alvin Kamara, if he was in the right situation, go out there and do that again, kind of stuff. But
Saquon Barkley, even if he's healthy and out there in Philly,
Yeah, very, very true. Can go out there and do that. But, in Philly, they like to have a spread running attack. They have a running quarterback, which takes a little bit from your rushing attack there. You're not getting those quick little I formation, get the first down type runs for yourself. So, yeah, I see it as probably you either see Jahmyr Gibbs ends up doing that this next year. I could also see maybe maybe a Bijan Robinson being able to do
Yeah.
that. You now have Kirk Cousins out there who I think is talented enough to leak it out consistently to a receiver threat in Bijan Robinson, so he can get up there in receiving yards and then also be in a run first system, which I'm expecting to be a run first system with the talent they have out there.
Yeah.
I think
That's a
he
good
might
call.
be a guy that could do it.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think with the new system, that's a possibility. Because I think Gibbs, I think Monty's going to get too many carries, to make that happen. But definitely has the talent to, and maybe if Monty has an injury or they just really feel like he's got the hot hand, they ride it a little bit more. But yeah, Atlanta. That if I got to say, I'm right now just out of our conversation, I'm going. If there's another person that I would say might do it, that's a guy.
Oh yeah, maybe a Josh Jacobs.
He
He just gets a high workload whenever he's playing.
That's going to be an interesting. He's got a new uniform. Maybe so.
Best schematically he's ever gotten with being a part of that system in Green Bay. I think you got such a rotation of coordinators out there with the Raiders. Him getting with Green Bay that has a in-plant system that has really let running backs thrive. You saw that with Aaron Jones and as well as Quadzilla. I'm blanking on his actual name.
Oh yeah, AJ Dillon. Yeah.
AJ Dillon. And I think that he's going to be a guy that can bring in a lot. He's going to be a 3-down back, I think, in that system where you only see AJ Dillon as a breather kind of guy, where he needed to be asked a little bit more in with Aaron Jones, who Aaron Jones is more of that 3rd down pass, 3rd and long, second. He can do a lot of work, but you need to give him a little bit more rest than a guy like Josh Jacobs, who can really carry a workload.
Yeah, no, that'll be interesting. I mean, they re-signed AJ, so he's going to get a little bit of that work. But like you said, it almost hurts to take Jacobs out of the field to put AJ Dillon on. I don't. That's not a hate on AJ at all. Just, he's the better back, and
for sure.
So that we'll see what happens there. But yeah, it'll be fun. Someone will surprise us. There's going to be someone that we're not even talking about right now that's going to have a really good season in the NFL, and it's going to be fun to watch it. But yeah, I mean, I expect to see Christian McCaffrey back to the 49ers. Really have a nice season as well, because again, the one thing that I think has helped him a little healthier than out in Carolina is there's just so many weapons to focus on in that offense that they can't just go and just beat the dude up. Like, you've got to account for some other things that are happening out there. And so, yeah, but I wouldn't be shocked if I see him do another 2,000 yards, but probably not likely he's going to do that 2 years in a row.
Absolutely. So, okay, what's our solidified NFC West standings? Mine goes number 1, 49ers, number 2, Rams, number 3, Seahawks, and at the 4th place spot, we got the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, I don't want to just pick the same as you, but you definitely got the 49ers at the top. Although if the Rams get hot, watch out for them. If Stafford's healthy, they could even push for that number 1 spot. So I'll just say that Rams I almost want to just be hot take, John over here and say Rams in there, but I'm not going to do it. 49ers, number 1, Rams, number 2, Seahawks. Again, there's a lot of talent in that building, new coaching staff. So we'll see what happens there, but I think they're going to be solidly at 3. All 3 of those teams could be in the playoffs as well. And then Cardinals, I look to see improvement on them, but they're going to still finish at the bottom of that division, I believe.
And that wraps up the very fun NFC West. Super excited for this upcoming season and see all that talent out there on display.
Well, thank you for watching and listening to Ruggles Roundup on the Elevated Mission podcast. Make sure if you're on YouTube, you click the subscribe and you click the like button. We love that you're out there listening and watching us talk about all things sports. We'll see you next time.